This video is about the mom stood near the hotel lobby and a millionaire held the door for her. If this story touches your heart, please mention where you are watching from in the comments. Please like the video and share your thoughts in comments. The soft hum of the hotel lobby enveloped Sarah as she stood, her fingers fidgeting with the strap of her oversized handbag. The grand chandelier above cast a warm glow, illuminating the finely polished marble floors and the gentle chatter of guests checking in. It was supposed to be a simple trip to attend a business conference, but somewhere along the way her sense of purpose had diminished, replaced by an unsettling unease that made her stomach churn. She had always been the responsible one, the one to put her family first. With a busy husband frequently away on business and 2 children under 7 who required a tidal wave of energy, Sarah often felt like a ghost in her own life. Every now and then, she longed for a glimpse of the woman she once was, vibrant, ambitious, and daringly adventurous. But today, it was just her, standing in a lavish hotel lobby, wanting to slip back into the shadows of her responsibilities. As if sensing her internal turmoil, the massive glass door swung open, and a figure stepped through, the chilly breeze carrying with it the scent of autumn leaves and new beginnings. He was tall, with an effortless grace and a presence that demanded attention. His tailored navy suit fit him perfectly, accentuating broad shoulders and an athletic frame. Dark hair fell in soft waves, framing a chiseled jaw and expressive brown eyes that seemed to catch the light in a captivating way. "Allow me," he said, his voice smooth as silk as he held the door with a gentlemanly flourish. There was an air of confidence about him. It was magnetic. Caught off guard, Sarah blinked, momentarily forgetting her own hesitations. "Thank you," she managed, stepping through the door and into the lobby. The chill of the outside air faded as she entered the warmth of the interior. "Are you here for the conference?" he asked, casually falling into step beside her. She noticed a slight accent, hinting at a background far removed from the ordinary. "Yes, just a small thing for work," Sarah replied, hoping her tone conveyed nonchalance. But inside, her heart fluttered, igniting an energy she hadn't felt in years. "And you?" "The business as well," he replied, glancing sideways at her. There was an undeniable spark in his gaze, a shared moment of curiosity. "But I like to think of it as an opportunity to meet interesting people, like you." A blush crept onto Sarah's cheeks, and she quickly looked away, pretending to check her phone. Was he flirting? The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. She didn't know how to navigate this. Her life was filled with PTA meetings and grocery lists, not charming conversations with strangers. "I am David," he continued, unabashedly extending his hand. She hesitated for a heartbeat before shaking it, feeling the warmth of his grip seep into her skin. "And you are?" "Sarah." The name felt foreign on her lips, a remnant of the woman she used to be. "Pleasure to meet you, Sarah," he said, and for an instant the world around them faded. It was as if they were the only 2 people in the sprawling lobby bustling with life. "What do you do?" "I am in marketing," she said, her voice steadying as she recalled her years of dedication to the field. "It is fascinating, really finding creative ways to connect with people." "Creative, I like that. I am in tech, the number-crunching side of things," he replied, leaning against the ornate reception desk as he regarded her with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. "What is your secret to connecting?" Sarah chuckled softly, the sound surprising even herself. "I guess it is about understanding what people want, not just on the surface, but deep down, beneath their fears and desires." David's eyes narrowed slightly, intrigued. "That's quite profound. You must have a talent for discerning the unsaid." "Or maybe I'm just good at reading the room," she shot back playfully, a spark igniting in their exchange. She felt herself relax, the tension from earlier dissipating like fog before the sun. "You read definitely more than that," he countered, his tone playful yet earnest. "People often underestimate the power of intuition. You seem quite intuitive." The compliment lingered in the air, weighing heavy with unspoken possibilities. Sarah felt her heart race. No one had ever described her that way, and she didn't quite know how to respond. "Just trying to survive the daily grind," she said lightly, biting her lip to suppress a smile. "How about you? What is your angle in tech?" With a casual motion that only heightened her interest, David pushed off the desk and took a step closer. "I am actually working on a project that focuses on user experience, how technology can enhance emotional connection." Their eyes met, and Sarah felt a rush of connection. "That is ambitious. It sounds like you are onto something meaningful." David nodded, running a hand through his hair, a gesture that was both charming and disarming. "I hope so, but sometimes I think the most profound connections happen outside of the digital world." The underlying tension in his words resonated with her deeply, and she found herself wanting to know more. What do you mean? Well, he began, leaning in slightly, I believe that true connection often comes from vulnerability, from being open and authentic. It is challenging, especially in a world that values perfection. As he spoke, Sarah felt an unexpected urge to share her own struggles, but the weight of her responsibilities kept her at bay. Instead, she found herself nodding, drawn into his passionate musings. That is true. We wear so many masks, even in our closest relationships. He studied her for a moment, his expression shifting to something more serious. Would you say you wear a mask? The question hung heavily between them, and Sarah's heart thudded painfully against her ribcage. She had never been good at revealing her vulnerabilities, especially to a stranger. I think everyone does, to some extent, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. It is easier that way. That is the tragedy, isn't it? He replied softly, a hint of sadness in his eyes. If we hide behind our masks, we miss out on the chance to truly connect. A silence wrapped around them, charged with unspoken emotions. Sarah felt fiercely drawn to him, yet the knot in her stomach tightened. She wasn't here to explore a new connection, she was here to work. Still, the tension crackled like electricity in the air, and she could sense that David felt it too. Perhaps we can help each other take off our masks, he suggested, a playful but earnest glint in his eye. Over coffee? The idea sent a jolt of excitement through her, but the practical side of her brain quickly chimed in. Sarah had responsibilities waiting for her back home, a life that demanded her attention. I really shouldn't she stammered, her instincts battling her desire. I have to prepare for my presentation. David's gaze softened, and the slight disappointment in his eyes was palpable. Of course, I understand. Just thought we could have a moment of truth before diving back into our respective worlds. The sincerity of his words made her heart ache with longing. She could almost picture what the coffee would be like, the rich aroma, the warmth of shared laughter. But the reality of her life loomed over her, suffocating and relentless. Maybe just a quick coffee, she found herself saying, almost against her better judgment. But I really can't linger. His face lit up, and for a brief moment all doubts faded. Great, there's a cafe just around the corner. I know the best spot. As they stepped outside into the crisp air, Sarah's heart raced not just from the chill, but from the electric uncertainty of what lay ahead. If only for a moment, she allowed herself to lean into the thrill of spontaneity of connection. It was a risk. A small one, but a risk nonetheless. And just like that, she was drawn into a world of possibilities, where vulnerability danced hand in hand with desire, and the masks they wore began to slip. The cafe was a cozy nook tucked away from the bustling streets, its warm light spilling onto the sidewalk like an inviting hug. Sarah followed David inside, her pulse racing as she took in the mismatched wooden furniture and the scent of freshly brewed coffee wafting through the air. It was an unexpected oasis, contrasting with the formalities of the hotel lobby. David moved effortlessly to the counter, placing his order with the barista while Sarah lingered behind, feeling a mix of anticipation and anxiety. She was stepping into uncharted territory, and the thrill of it both exhilarated and frightened her. The remnants of her daily grind, the relentless responsibilities, the sacrifices seemed to fade with each passing second. 2 cappuccinos. David called over his shoulder, a smile playing on his lips as he turned to face her. Or would you prefer something bolder? Cappuccino sounds perfect, she replied, her heart fluttering at the sight of his easy confidence. He was so different from the men she typically interacted with, so alive and direct. A great choice, he grinned, his eyes sparkling with mischief. I'll need the caffeine for our conversation. I plan on challenging your marketing intuition. Is that right? Sarah raised an eyebrow playfully, leaning against the counter, feeling a little bolder now that they were away from the hotel's imposing decor. What do you have in mind? I want to know what makes you tick, he said, leaning in just slightly, the intensity of his gaze making her feel seen in a way that was both thrilling and intimidating. What is the most compelling story you've ever told through your work? She pondered the question, the weight of it pulling her into the depths of her memory. I once worked on a campaign for a non-profit organization focused on mental health, she began, her voice steady. We highlighted real stories of struggle and recovery, showing how connection can be a lifeline. David listened intently, his expression shifting to admiration. That sounds incredible. It must have been rewarding. It was, she admitted, feeling a warmth spread through her as genuine interest. It reminded me of why I chose this path, to make an impact, to connect people, but then I got lost in the routine of it all. Routine can be the enemy of creativity, he said, leaning back slightly, his arms crossed as he regarded her thoughtfully. I can relate. Sometimes I feel like I am drowning in numbers rather than seeing the bigger picture. The coffee arrived, and Sarah took a moment to sip the frothy milk and bold espresso mingling perfectly on her palate. So, tell me, David, what do you do to break free from that drowning feeling? I try to find inspiration in unexpected places, he replied, his voice lowering as if sharing a secret. Whether it is a walk in nature or people watching in a busy cafe like this, each moment is an opportunity to connect with stories. I love that, she said, her heart skipping a beat. The layers of his character were unfolding before her, revealing a man who sought depth rather than superficiality. You have a talent for connecting with people, don't you? David commented, his gaze steady on hers. It is in your nature. You might have a mask, but I can see the real you beneath it. Maybe, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. But revealing that part of myself is complicated. Complicated can be beautiful, he countered, lowering his voice further, leaning closer. What if we took a moment to peel back those layers together? Her breath hitched, and she felt the air crackle between them, vibrant and electric. There was an undeniable chemistry that sent her heart racing, but the internal battle waged on. Part of her wanted to lean into this connection, while another part screamed for caution. David, she began hesitantly, I am not sure this is wise. I have a life waiting for me back home. Life can wait, he stated, his voice warm and inviting. We're here in this moment. Can't we just enjoy it? I am not asking for anything more than your company. His words hung in the air, a tantalizing promise that made her pulse quicken. She could feel the weight of her responsibilities pressing down on her, yet there was a flicker of desire that urged her to stay just a little longer. What if it complicates things further? Sometimes complications lead to the most beautiful outcomes, he said, a hint of mischief dancing in his eyes. Besides, we're both adults, we can navigate this whatever this is. Sarah couldn't help but smile at his earnestness. You're quite persuasive, you know. I've had my fair share of practice, he replied, his tone teasing yet sincere. But really, I just sense something special between us, don't you? Her heart raced, and for a moment she was truly tempted to abandon her reservations to surrender to this spark. But then a shadow flickered across her thoughts, the images of her children at home, their innocent faces, and the responsibilities that defined her. What if you were just a momentary distraction, she said, trying to steady her voice, even as it trembled with anticipation. What if I am not ready to take this leap? Then let us just dip our toes in, he replied, his expression softening. No expectations, just two people enjoying a connection. If it leads somewhere, great. If it doesn't, we part ways with a story to tell. As the words settled in the space between them, Sarah couldn't help but wonder if she could allow herself this moment a brief escape from reality. You know, you're quite an enigma, she mused, leaning forward slightly, captivated by his intensity. You seem to know exactly what you want. And what is that? He asked, his voice low, filled with curiosity. Connection, she breathed, the word escaping her lips before she could reconsider. But it is complicated by everything else. David regarded her with a mixture of understanding and desire, the tension in the air thickening. Complications are part of life, but not experiencing connection. Real connection is the larger tragedy. I guess I've been afraid to connect again, she admitted, a voice barely above a whisper. It feels risky. Risk often leads to reward, he urged gently. You've taken a risk coming here, let us take another. As she locked eyes with him, Sarah felt a pull, an unspoken promise of vulnerability, a chance to explore the depths of her own emotions. It felt exhilarating and terrifying all at once. Okay, she decided, the weight of her decision hanging in the air. No expectations, just for now. Perfect, he said, a genuine smile spreading across his face, illuminating the room. Then let us make the most of this moment, shall we? They spent the next hour entwined in conversation, the world around them fading into a blur. Laughter danced between them, and they shared stories, humorous family anecdotes, childhood dreams, and their hopes for the future. David's charm was infectious, and as Sarah shared pieces of herself, she felt the mask slipping away. Perhaps there was beauty in this unpredictable connection with a man who understood her more than she'd anticipated. As the cafe filled with the sound of laughter and chatter, Sarah allowed herself to bask in the warmth of their connection. She could feel the walls she had built around herself softening, the possibility of something new beginning to emerge. But, in the back of her mind, a whisper of caution lingered, reminding her that life had a way of complicating even the simplest moments. But for now, she could let herself be utterly present, allowing herself to explore whatever this was with David, however brief it might be. The risk felt worth taking, if only just for this moment in time. As the conversation flowed, time slipped through the cracks unnoticed, like the golden autumn leaves swelling outside the cafe window. Sarah found herself lost in the warmth of David's laughter, the way his eyes sparkled when he spoke with passion. Each word exchanged felt like a small thread weaving their lives together, if only for an afternoon. "Do you have a favorite place that inspires you?" David asked, leaning forward, his attention fixed on her as if she were the only person in the room. Sarah pondered the question, her mind drifting to moments spent in the sun-drenched parks of her hometown and the serene lakes where she and her children often played. "I love the local park," she said, a smile breaking across her face. "It feels like a sanctuary for me. The kids play and I can just breathe." "Sounds idyllic. I like to escape to the mountains whenever I can," David replied, his voice warm with nostalgia. "The peace up there is unmatched. There is something about nature that strips everything down to its essence. Don't you think?" Sarah nodded, feeling a flicker of longing for those moments of calm. "Absolutely. It reminds you of what really matters." "Exactly," he said, his gaze steady. "And it sounds like you prioritize family." "I do," she said, a hint of pride in her voice. "They are the center of my world. My husband travels a lot, and I am often the one holding it all together." A shadow flickered across David's face, and she caught the tightening of his mouth as he processed her words. "That must be tough sometimes," he said softly. "I can't imagine how hard it is to juggle everything." "It is," she admitted, her heart tightening slightly at the thought of her responsibilities. "But I love them. They re my everything." "What about you, sir?" David leaned in closer, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. "What do you do for yourself, outside of family?" His question caught her off guard, and she hesitated, searching for an answer that felt honest yet safe. "That I suppose I don't prioritize myself enough," she finally said. "I've been so caught up in being a wife and a mother that I've kind of lost sight of who I am outside of that." "Maybe it is time to rediscover that woman," he suggested, the sincerity in his voice stirring something deep within her. "You seem vibrant, as if there is so much more you want to express." "Vibrant?" Sarah chuckled lightly, trying to mask the flutter in her chest. "I think I've just learned to adapt." David studied her, his gaze unwavering. "Trust me, there is vibrancy within you. I see it in the way you talk about your work, and even in the way you light up when discussing your kids." A warmth spread across her cheeks, both flattered and embarrassed by his attention. "You're a smooth talker, aren't you?" "Only when I am inspired," he replied, his tone teasing but layered with sincerity. "You make it easy." As their coffees cooled, the atmosphere shifted around them, laden with unspoken tension. Sarah found herself wondering how long it would be before reality came crashing back in, before the responsibilities of her life reasserted themselves. "Have you ever thought about what would happen if you took a leap?" David asked, breaking the silence that had settled like a blanket around them. "A leap?" she echoed, confusion evident in her voice. "Yet a leap of faith," he said, his eyes bright with conviction. "What if you allowed yourself to explore this, to break free from the routine, and just to be?" His words ignited a spark of longing within her, but a flicker of fear quickly snuffed it out. "I don't think I can," she murmured, and not forming in her stomach. "There are too many consequences to consider." "Consequences?" David leaned back slightly, crossing his arms as he regarded her with a mixture of curiosity and concern. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I have a family, a husband who relies on me, children who need me," she said, her voice tremulous. "It is not that simple." "It never is," he replied, his voice steady. "But what if those moments of freedom could help you be a better mother, a better wife? What if they reignited that spark you once had?" Sarah blinked back tears as the truth of his words hit her. She hadn't thought of herself as anything other than a caretaker for so long. "I don't know if I can just abandon my responsibilities like that," she whispered, her heart heavy with doubt. "I am not suggesting abandoning anyone," he assured her gently. "Just exploring who you are beyond those roles. Isn't there a part of you that craves that?" "It is complicated," she said again, frustration creeping into her voice. "It feels selfish." "Self-care isn't selfish," David countered, his expression earnest. "It is necessary. You can pour from an empty cup." His words resonated with her, striking a chord deep within. "Maybe," she said, her voice faltering. "But every time I think about doing something for myself, guilt creeps in." "Guilt is a thief," he said, a serious note in his voice. "It will rob you of the joy connectedness can bring. You deserve to relish in your own life, Sarah. You owe it to yourself." In that moment, Sarah felt the weight of years pressing against her chest. She had spent so much time being the supportive partner, the devoted mother, that she had forgotten how to be herself. The flicker of possibility David offered was thrilling yet terrifying. Maybe I can try, she said hesitantly, her voice barely above a whisper. David's eyes lit up at her words, and a genuine smile spread across his face. That's all I am asking, try. She took a sip of her coffee, the warmth spreading through her, a contrast to the chill of her uncertainty. But it's harder than it sounds, she admitted, fear creeping back in. What if I lose sight of everything? Then you find your way back, he said, his voice steady and confident. But I think you will find that you gain more than you lose. As she considered his words, Sarah felt hope unfurling within her. Perhaps there was room for both her responsibilities and her own desires. Could she really allow herself that chance? What about you? She asked, shifting the focus back to him. Have you taken that leap? He chuckled softly, a hint of humor in his eyes. I am still working on it, he admitted. It's easier to encourage someone else than to take the plunge myself. Why is that? Sarah inquired, intrigued by the vulnerability he was willing to share. Fear, I suppose, he replied, his expression growing serious. You can control everything in life, and sometimes the unknown is terrifying. It's a struggle I think we all face. True, she said, feeling the weight of shared understanding in the air. Aren't we all just trying to navigate through the chaos? Exactly, he said, his eyes locking onto hers. And sometimes, we just need someone to remind us that connection exists beyond the chaos. The intensity of his gaze sent a rush of warmth through her, and Sarah felt her heart race. It was as if he could see straight into her soul, and for the first time in a long while, she felt understood. Thanks for this, she said quietly, her voice thick with emotion. You've given me a lot to think about. David smiled, his expression softening. Anytime, I am glad you took a leap with me today, even if it's just a small one. Sarah couldn't help but return his smile, feeling the flutter of something new in her chest. So what now? Nah? He grinned, leaning back in his chair. We enjoy this moment, and maybe, once we're redone, I can convince you to let me show you more of this city. It's beautiful, and there is so much to explore. The thought sent a thrill through her, but the reminder of her responsibilities loomed larger in her mind. Just think about it, he interrupted gently. No pressure, I promise, just an adventure. You deserve that. As they settled back into the rhythm of their conversation, the possibilities stretched out before them like an uncharted map. In that moment, Sarah allowed herself to imagine a day filled with laughter, new experiences, and the potential for connection beyond the confines of her everyday life. She felt lighter, freer, as if the gravity of her daily grind had begun to lift, even if only for a few hours. And though uncertainty still lingered in the back of her mind, there was a spark of hope igniting within her, a chance to rediscover who she was beyond the role she wore. And in that cafe, with the aroma of coffee swirling around them and the world outside bustling on, Sarah realized that perhaps she could learn to balance both the responsibilities and the desires, the fear and the freedom. It was a journey she was ready to embark upon, one small leap at a time. The cafe hummed softly with the sound of clinking cups and low conversations, but for Sarah and David, the rest of the world faded into a distant murmur. As they continued their conversation, the warmth between them deepened, filling the once empty spaces within her. David leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table, his eyes intent on hers. So, what does Sarah do when she is not wearing her many hats? He asked, his tone playful yet earnest. What does she dream of? She felt a flurry of emotions at the question. It was a rare moment when someone asked about her dreams rather than her duties. Honestly, I used to love painting, she admitted, a hint of nostalgia coloring her words. It was my escape, a way to bring my imagination to life. Painting? He raised an eyebrow, intrigued. What kind of art did you create? Mostly landscapes, anything that captured a moment in nature. She smiled wistfully, recalling long afternoons spent with a brush in hand, losing herself in her own world. But I haven't picked up a brush in what feels like forever. Why not? He probed gently, the intensity in his eyes urging her to dig deeper. What stopped you? Her heart sank as the weight of that question settled in. Life, I guess, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. It just slipped away in the chaos of everything else. David's expression shifted, a flicker of understanding passing between them. It is easy to lose ourselves in responsibilities, he said softly. But you deserve to reclaim that part of you. His words ignited a flicker of hope within her, yet fear gripped her heart. But how? I don't even know where to begin, she confessed, her brow furrowing. Maybe start small, he suggested, his voice soothing. Just an hour a week dedicated to painting. Allow yourself that space to breathe and create again. The thought danced tantalizingly at the edges of her mind, but the weight of her obligations pulled her back. "And what about my family?" she asked, voice laced with uncertainty. "They need me." "They do, but they also need a happy you," he replied, his gaze unwavering. "You are allowed to have your own dreams too, Sarah." Fierce sincerity in his voice struck a chord deep within her. She felt an unexpected warmth blossom in her chest, something she hadn't felt in so long. "I never thought of it that way," she admitted, her mind racing with possibilities. "You should," he encouraged, leaning back and crossing his arms, a playful grin spreading across his face. "And if you need a push, I am here to help. Just say the word." "Is that your way of volunteering to be my muse?" she teased, her mood lifting as she felt the tension of the past few hours begin to dissolve. David chuckled, a low, rich sound that sent warmth flooding through her. "Only if you want me to be," he replied, his eyes sparkling with mischief. "But I might need some artistic guidance." "Maybe you could paint an abstract representation of your tech projects," she suggested, grinning back at him. "That could be a real masterpiece." "Touch," he laughed, shaking his head. "If my projects were paintings, they'd be a chaotic mess, but I am game for anything that involves paint and a canvas." Their laughter filled the air, cutting through the seriousness that had been hanging over them. Just then, the barista approached, clearing their empty cups and offering a fresh round. "Can I get you two anything else? Dessert, perhaps?" "Dessert sounds delightful," David responded, his enthusiasm infectious. "What do you recommend?" "Definitely the chocolate torte," the barista suggested with a smile. "It is rich, decadent, and just the right amount of sweetness." "Perfect." Sarah chimed in, feeling a sudden rush of giddiness at the prospect of sharing dessert with David. They placed their order, and Sarah was surprised by how easily they slipped back into the light-hearted banter. Once their plates arrived, she took a forkful of the torte and offered it to David. "Here, you have to try this," she said, her heart racing as she watched him lean closer. David took the bite, his eyes lighting up with delight. "Wow, you were right. This is incredible," he exclaimed, wiping a bit of chocolate from the corner of his mouth. "You should write reviews for desserts." "Or maybe I'll just need to start a fruit blog," she laughed, feeling warmth spread through her at the playful exchange. "I'll call it Mommy a Sweet Tooth." "That sounds like a hit," he said, leaning back in his chair, his smile broadening. Who wouldn't he want to read about a mother balancing kids and decadent desserts? As they continued to share bites of the torte, Sarah felt the tension between them shift, becoming electric and palpable. Her heart raced as she caught his eye, the playful glint now mixed with something deeper, an invitation to explore the connection they'd forged. "Tell me, have you always been this adventurous?" she asked, tilting her head slightly, trying to gauge the layers of his character. "Adventurous?" he echoed, a hint of amusement dancing in his eyes. "I suppose I've tried to embrace new experiences when I can, but it has often been more about work than play." "What is the most adventurous thing you've done?" she pressed, leaning in, curiosity igniting in her chest. David hesitated for a moment, a shadow passing over his features. "I did a year abroad in Spain for work," he began, his voice growing soft. "I thought it would be a chance to explore and break free from the routine. Instead, I discovered I was more isolated than I realized." "Isolated?" Sarah asked, intrigued. "Yeah," he said, his expression turning thoughtful. "I was surrounded by people, but I didn't really connect with anyone. It was all business meetings and deadlines. Sometimes I wonder if the adventure was worth it." His honesty struck a chord within her, stirring empathy. "I can relate to that feeling of isolation," she admitted quietly. "Sometimes, even in a crowded room, I feel completely alone." David's gaze softened, the understanding in his eyes making her pulse quicken. "It is a strange contradiction, isn't it, being surrounded yet feeling distant?" "Yes," she breathed, a wave of vulnerability washing over her. "It is like I am caught between two worlds, who I am and who I am expected to be." "Have you ever thought about bridging that gap?" he asked, his voice steady and warm. "Finding a way to merge the two?" As she pondered his question, Sarah felt a flicker of hope ignite within her once more. Perhaps this connection was more than a fleeting moment. Maybe it was a chance to forge a path toward becoming whole again. "I'd like to try," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I really want to." David's expression brightened, and a smile broke across his face. "That is the spirit, and it starts with moments like this, having the courage to explore." "Moments like this," she echoed, letting the words hang between them. The air crackled with unspoken possibilities, each heartbeat echoing the tension between them. "Speaking of exploring," David said, breaking the spell momentarily. "Are you up for a walk after this? The park nearby is stunning this time of year." I do love that, she said, her heart racing at the idea of further stepping outside her comfort zone. But I have to be mindful of time. Of course, he replied, his tone gentle. But just for a little while, we can wander, talk, and just enjoy the moment together. As they finished the last bites of dessert, Sarah felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. This was more than just a fleeting encounter, it was an opportunity to step outside the confines of her daily life. She could feel the wall she had built beginning to crumble, piece by piece. All right, a quick walk it is, she agreed, her voice steady. But I can promise to stay out too late. A deal, he said, his eyes sparkling with mischief. Just enough time to soak in the beauty of the world, and maybe share a few more stories. As Sarah pushed back her chair, she felt a rush of anticipation. This was a moment she hadn't dared to envision, walking side by side with a man who made her feel alive again. The thrill of the unknown beckoned, and she couldn't help but smile, eager to see where the path would lead them next. They stepped outside into the brisk air, the golden light of the setting sun casting a warm glow across the street. The crispness of autumn filled her lungs as they began to walk, laughter and conversation flowing easily between them. The park loomed ahead, its colorful foliage inviting them into a world where responsibilities momentarily faded into the background. I love this time of year, she said, glancing around at the vibrant leaves. It feels like everything is alive. Exactly, David replied, his voice rich with enthusiasm. Every color tells its story, and each leaf represents change. I think we could all use a little change from time to time. Maybe I am finally ready for that change, she mused, a hint of vulnerability lacing